Then Kamal al-Malakh opened a hole, and he said when he looked at the hole, he could smell history. When he did that, he smelled history for 4,600 years ago.
The smell came from hundreds of planks of cedar wood lying at the bottom of a limestone pit. The pieces fit together like a giant jigsaw puzzle. When the puzzle was complete, it looked like this. This is one of the oldest boats in the world. Built for the pharaoh Khufu 4,500 years ago, it was carefully dismantled and buried next to his pyramid tomb so he could use it in the afterlife. For a boat lover like Owen Roberts, it's an inspiration.
The boat is a very impressive piece of engineering. They knew all the tricks. They knew about stability of a boat. They knew about locking the timbers together to reduce movement, because movement destroys a boat. They knew about how to use rope in tension to bind the vessel together. All the tricks were known. All that restricted them was the fact they had only wood and rope to do it with.
Today, builders rely on nails, and modern boats are almost always constructed around a skeletal framework. But ancient boats like Khufu's were built skin first, by weaving together thick outer planks.
So this is a sample of skin?
Yeah, just a sample of it. And you notice how thick it is for its width. The planks are very massive.
I noticed there are holes on
This is a replica of an ancient plank from Khufu's boat.
Tenons. And these tenons are knocked into place.
So no nails?
No, not much of a hammer either, I'm afraid.
The holes along the edge were made for mortise and tenon joints.
Getting heavier
Slowly
now.
the boat takes shape.
Yes, watch your fingers. You got any hook there?
So you
Additional holes allowed the Egyptians to weave the planks together.
Yeah, that is pretty tight.
Get a lot of tension on there.
As an extra precaution, reeds were stuffed into the seams.
Now this is instead of caulking.
The pressure on this was one of the things that stopped the water coming in.
Finally, crossbeams were added to provide internal support.
I see what you mean. You put on the skin first,
That's
you
right.
build the skin, then you build the skeleton.
That's right.
That's
right.
quite remarkable.
Now, this is what you see.
With just wood and rope, the Egyptians created seagoing ships and barges big and strong enough to carry obelisks. But how is such a tremendous weight loaded onto a boat without tipping it over? Owen Roberts has come up with a boat design that would make the job easier.
In order to carry the weight and to have it high, as in Hatshepsut, of course we had to go for a great beam.
Whoa,
You can
that
see
is
the
wide.
beam. It is, wasn't it?
A real wide-bodied barge.
Yes, indeed. And this
To
is
prevent
what
capsizing, a barge capable of carrying Hatshepsut's obelisks had to be extremely wide, with a length-to-width ratio of perhaps 2 to 1.
Wide.
Yes, that's right. And this is the way you could get stability in a single hull.
Owen will try out his idea on a scale model. He beaches the front end, securing it to a ramp that leads smoothly up to the deck. Ropes run from the obelisk up the ramp, across the deck, and through 2 wooden blocks, which turn the ropes back toward the bank.
Yalla!
In this way, the pullers can stay high and dry on the beach and don't have to wade out into the river.
I think Owen's experiment was very successful. It's very feasible that the Egyptians simply constructed a ramp right onto one end of that boat and dragged not one, I actually think two large obelisks onto it.
After her obelisks were loaded, Hatshepsut's barge was towed downstream to Thebes and the great house of Amun, now known as Karnak Temple. Sprawling across hundreds of acres, the vast complex was expanded by a succession of pharaohs over the course of several centuries. The god himself was believed to reside in a statue, kept under lock and key in the dark heart of the temple, the Holy of Holies. The statue is now gone, but ancient inscriptions describe the ritual that Amun's priests enacted within these walls.
They would go in, and with great ritual and ceremony, they would bring out the statue of the god. They would give it a symbolic meal. They would feed the god Amun, that is to give him offerings. They would give him incense, and they would bathe him ritually. They would give him clothes.
Sometimes the priest would take the statue of Amun across the Nile to the west bank of Thebes to visit the tombs of kings and nobles.
The family members of those deceased would be having barbecues out in front of their tombs, literally picnics, to have a communal meal with Amun and all the ancestors. All the statues of the deceased kings, who were gods in their own right, would be brought out of their temples to greet Amun. And then, of course, Amun would be brought back into Karnak Temple, down that axis, put into his little inner house at the back part of the Karnak Temple, and he would be, in effect, put to bed. The doors would be resealed with great ceremony, and then Amun would be at rest again.
As time went on, the quest to please and impress Amun drove pharaohs to erect bigger and bigger obelisks. Weighing up to 500 tons, these were some of the largest single stones ever quarried anywhere in the world. They were carved by hand and adorned with intricate hieroglyphs. Somehow, the Egyptians managed to stand them on end without breaking them. Each balanced upon a small stone pedestal with no support other than its own enormous weight. Only a handful of ancient obelisks survive intact in their original positions. All physical evidence of how they were raised has disappeared, except for one tantalizing clue.
This groove is one of the only direct pieces of evidence we have as to how they actually erected the obelisks.
On every pedestal stone, a deep groove is carved in one side. Without this groove, the obelisk might slip across its base. But the groove acts as a brake, and it helps keep the obelisk aligned when it's pulled to vertical. The trick is getting one edge of a stone weighing hundreds of tons safely into the turning groove.
It literally just moves from there onto the roller point here.
Mark Whitby is one of Britain's leading engineers.
And so we start applying load at the front.
He's devised a unique theory of how the ancient Egyptians might have raised their obelisks,
And tips it over.
inspired by the complex wood and rope work on Egyptian ships. Mark has designed an elaborate system to rotate the obelisk slowly down onto its pedestal stone.
Just pull it to vertical and put it in the position much as it really is in real life.
He hopes to try out his idea in a quarry in Aswan. A 30-ton granite obelisk has been placed atop an earthen ramp, and preparations are underway to lower it 12 feet into a turning groove. The first task is to assemble a large wooden framework that will provide the mechanical advantage to rotate the obelisk safely.
Okay, hold.
In this supporting role is Rick Brown, a sculptor and timber framer from Massachusetts. At the moment, he has no idea that events will soon propel him to center stage in the Obelisk drama. Meanwhile, Owen Roberts and his son, Yola, are in charge of rigging nearly a mile's worth of rope. With all this rope and wood, Mark Whitby hopes to harness the giant stone and carefully control its descent. While the engineer and his small army of assistants scramble to build their complicated contraption, Roger Hopkins is pursuing a completely different approach. With the large-scale obelisk already spoken for, Roger is left to experiment with a mini 2-ton block. And he's not happy about it.
If they ever give me a decent obelisk to work with, then we can do something. But no, I always end up in dog patch with the puniest little, you know what I mean.
Even though his obelisk is small, Roger still has to lower it with care.
Up on the ramp.
But instead of relying on ropes, he prefers a method that is more low-tech.
This is more like an ancient elevator of sorts.
So you're going to put it out onto this sand and then take the sand away to lower it down to its base.
Yeah, we're going to drag it out, drop it on this pile of sand. Now I've got
Buried under 21 tons of sand is Roger's miniature pedestal stone, complete with turning groove.
This block of wood goes all the way down to the turning groove of my pedestal stone. Likewise, I have a timber here and another one on the other side, which will help guide me when I'm removing the sand out from underneath the obelisk.
Roger's homespun technique doesn't impress Mark Whitby.
What we've got to do when you're moving these heavy stones around and wanting to put them somewhere is you've got to have absolute control over them. Imagine this for real with a 300-ton obelisk. And then look at the sort of control Roger's got right now with his sledge.
I want, we got to come, it's starting to shift over that way.
Stand up.
There's a thing called planning. You have to plan every single step in advance. And it's not appropriate necessarily to run back and get the chainsaw and slice off bits of sledge because you haven't thought about how long it needed to be to begin with.
That's it. A loss.
In spite of Mark's criticisms, Roger is not alone in his support for the sandpit method.
We have a number of pieces of evidence that sand was used in this way for lowering colossal sarcophagi down tomb shafts and for raising monuments like obelisks. There's actually an ancient papyrus where one scribe taunts another one, challenging him to design a way to erect a monument of thy lord, namely the pharaoh. It could be an obelisk, maybe a statue.
The 3,000-year-old document reads, "Empty the space that has been filled with sand beneath the monument of thy Lord, so that the monument may be established in its place."
There it goes. There it goes.
Many scholars believe the Egyptians used sand, but others argue that it's difficult to control.
Come forward and over this way a little
Removing it from around the base of a 300 or 400-ton obelisk could be dangerous.
Okay. We've come quite a way so far.
Okay, we got it pretty level for you all the way around.
Yeah.
A little bit here and a little bit there.
After a couple of hours, the obelisk is reaching the bottom of the sandpit.
There, just move.
And Roger is now removing the sand with his bare hands.
Roger,
Yeah.
do you think they would ever have been literally doing it by hand with a 400-tonner like